a Chossid has to realize that his connection to the Rebbe is an atzmisdik connection. And then, of course, it's an atzmisdik connection. But lepel, sevil sich das, sevil sich jens, and you want to do this, and you want to do that, and you don't actually, actualize this actual connection which we know about. But at least, first of all, we have to know it in our brain. And then we have to see to it, maybe to bring it down into Maisa. And hopefully to bring it up, shikul down into heart, in our heart as well.
I'm Yossi Kamen. Welcome to Among Chassidim by Der Herr, an ongoing farbrengen about life as a Chossid, our vibrant connection with the Rebbe, and inspired living shaped by the way he teaches us each and every day. Bruchim Abayim, Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Wolberg, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, how are you?
Doing good, Baruch Hashem. Thank you for making the effort to make this happen. I guess let's start. I think that you were by all or most of the Rebbe's farbrengens since I think Tafshan Lamed Gimel. I think that's the right year. And from what I understand, I think that was part of the what attracted you to the Rebbe in the first place. I don't know. I don't really know. So that's my question. Is that the case, or what's the story there?
I'm not really sure. It's like very uncomfortable to speak about my own stories. I mean, I don't feel that I have really such a serious story. So I could just tell you a little bit about myself and know where I'm coming from. And I think that'll give you the general gist of things. My parents were both survivors, so to speak. They weren't in the camps, but they both were in Russia during the war. They're both from Poland. And they came to America, and we lived in Brownsville on Stone Avenue. That's where we lived. And at that point in time, my father was going to send me to a cheder, and Oletera had a bus going to Brownsville, which wasn't really far. Oletera at that point in time was on Eastern Parkway between Rochester and Buffalo. They had a building. They had two buildings there. I still remember it. And that's where, and it wasn't so far from where we lived. And there would be a bus coming from the yeshiva to Stone Avenue, picking up a few boys, and we went to learn there. So I started learning in Oletera. That was my first learning. It was Mrs. Teitelbaum. She was the pre-1/8 teacher. And then there was Yossel Reitzis, which was the first grade teacher. And then there was Shalom Berveshetsky was the second grade teacher. And I was there for 2 years, but there was no limudei chayil. So, I mean, I was there for 2 years.
Lubavitch.
My parents were in Lubavitch. No, there's nothing to do with connecting to Lubavitch. So I would imagine, even though I don't remember it, I remember being in camp there as a little child. I'm sure l'chura there was a parade in Tafshan Chav. So l'chura I was by the parade. I don't remember it, but I imagine, I'm sure Oletera went to the parade, and I'm sure I was part of that parade. So that was probably the first time I saw the Rebbe was like Ba'imar, Tafshan Chav. And during that time, we moved to East Flatbush. And in East Flatbush, there were the Hechts. So actually, the Hechts, I knew some of them from Oletera, Yosef Shia. We were in the same class in Oletera, and then I lived right next to Yankel Hecht Shul, and there was Michal Teitelbaum. So there was a certain connection. I knew a little bit about Lubavitch, and I knew some Lubavitchers. And I would walk from East Flatbush to Crown Heights to the Rebbe's farbrengen on a regular basis. It was like as a young child. Talking about like a 7-year-old, 8-year-old. I had friends in Crown Heights. Not Lubavitchers also, because I was learning in Tervadas of Crown Heights at that point in time. And I would go. So I would go to 770, and it used to be the small shul of the 770, the back, the first shul. And there would be like tables in the back where the kids would stand and say l'chaim and whatever, maybe hear something of what the Rebbe is saying, say l'chaim, and then go back home. And that was the Seder Hadvar. That was the Seder Dvarim. And I'm just saying, and as I got a little older, so maybe I stayed a little longer for Varengen, I heard some more things, and there was a general attraction of me to what was going on in 770, to the Bachrim, to the atmosphere of 770. I'm just telling you where it was. Eventually, I went to learn in the yeshiva of Staten Island, which was the Mesivta, that was when I was 12 years old. That was when I went to a dormitory. I'm telling you just my life story, just to avoid your questions, and maybe I'll just give you background. And I knew about Lubavitch, and I gravitated to Lubavitch, and I was like considered the Lubavitcher there. I was considered the Lubavitcher in the yeshiva. That was like, and then I would go, I remember, I think the first actual farbrengen that I went to a farbrengen during the week was Yud Beis Tammuz Tovshin Chavtes. Like this, I would only go on Shabbos or Yontiv. But Yud Beis Tammuz Tovshin Chavtes, so I remember going from the yeshiva in Staten Island to the farbrengen, which would involve going on the ferry and then taking the train to Kingston Avenue and then going back by ferry at night and like waiting for the ferry and waiting for the bus. It was like, I remember I still remember singing Vani Eftach Boch on the bus stop, waiting for the bus after the ferry, Behamshel to farbrengen of Yitas Kislev. I'm just giving you an example of what it was. And that's where I was. So I was like in the yeshiva there, I was like the Lubavitcher. And I gravitated to Lubavitch. I would come and I was very strongly attracted to it. And then the rest, I suppose, is history. As things progressed, eventually I decided, and there was also Tanya Shiur in the yeshiva, which Meir Anis used to send people. There would be Binyamin Cohen from Australia would come give a shiur on a regular basis. Shalom Berg-Groner gave a shiur. There was a time Shalom Duchman used to come give a shiur. Zalman Lipsker, which I think is one of the Gaboim in 770, would give a shiur. There would be different people giving shiur there in Staten Island, and these were all shiurim. It was a shiur that was done in a car because there was no shiur, so we would learn in a car.
Allowed.
Wasn't allowed, and that's what that would happen. I'm just telling you the way it was. What should I tell you more? I still remember, like, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein would come to yeshiva on Yontif, like Shavuos, he would come to yeshiva. Maybe other times he would come. I remember chazering a word that I heard from the Rebbe. I said, "Oh, B'Shem the Rebbe, that Yigia Kapecha." It's really Lukoteteri Yigia Kapecha Kiseichel Ashrecha V'Tevelach. That when's Ashrecha V'Tevelach, when you only have the Yigia of the Kapayim and not the Rosh, only the Kapayim. So I remember like him being like very, very, very like impressed with the word, with this Yigia Kapecha. Just Thomas, I said it over in the name of the Rebbe. And that was that. Maybe I could share another little story which would help anybody. I don't know. I remember my father asking the Rebbe at Settle about a shidduch for one of my sisters, and it was a shidduch about someone that had like some history in the family of not some connected to health. And my father asked the Rebbe whether he should do the shidduch. The shidduch didn't happen, but it's not important. That was the Rebbe. He asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe told him, "Al pi hiros Rav Meir Hiro." That was the answer. So I was learning in yeshiva in Staten Island. So my father told me, I was like Mr. boy of 14, 15. So my father tells me I should ask Rabbi Moshe. I'm there, so ask Rabbi Moshe.
1 second.
So
can I have two questions for my understanding? Yeah. Number one, and I'll remember exactly where we're holding with the story of Rabbi Moshe. This yeshiva Staten Island is part of the network of Rabbi Moshe Feinstein's yeshiva?
Rabbi Moshe Feinstein didn't have a network of yeshiva. There was a yeshiva in East Side. He was at a yeshiva in that yeshiva, and then there was another yeshiva. There was one more yeshiva that was affiliated with that yeshiva. Yeah, that was called the Yeshiva of Staten Island, which his son Reuven ran, and he still runs, I believe.
Got it. Okay, and your father was asking the Rebbe these questions.
Yeah.
So that means he had shaykhs on his own to the Rebbe.
Not really. I mean, The truth is, my mother worked in Crown Heights in the in the bakery on Albany. There used to be a bakery on Albany Avenue near Eastern Parkway. So she worked there, and Rabbi Groner would come there, and as a result of that, they went one into Yechidus. My mother wanted to go into Yechidus about an uncle, whatever. It's nicht nageh. And they went to Yechidus. That was through the connection of my mother meeting Rabbi Groner in the bakery, and the Rebbitzin would sometimes come into the bakery, Derech Hagav, and so probably somehow or another, I imagine how would my father get it settled to the Rebbe? Probably gave it to my mother, and my mother maybe gave it to someone. I don't know exactly how it happened. My mother would come to Crown Heights. She wasn't so far from 770. Am I still on? Yeah, it's very
good.
Well. So B'kitzur, that's what happened.
Okay.
And the Rebbe answered, Alpi, Katzas Rav Meirei. So I remember at that time, Rabbi Moshe was staying in yeshiva. He would stay in the dorm, and he would wake up like 4:30 in the morning, go down into the Zal and learn, or write, whatever. And it would be like, so I also woke up that time, and I went over to ask him this question. And me, with my whatever, a little bit ignorance, so I sounded funny to me that this is a question that shaykhs to a Rav. It sounds more like a question shaykhs to a Rebbe. So I remember telling him, the Rebbe, I told him that my father asked the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said he should ask a Rav. So my father asked me to ask you. My father told me to ask you. It doesn't make sense that it has a shaykhs to a Rav. It's something more of like a Rebbe type of question. And he started like saying, no, the Fedish not. It's certainly shaykhs to a Rav. First of all, everything shaykhs to a Rav. And the shaila is whether betrezim nahave chazaka, betlasachizim nahave chazaka, whether or not you have to be cheshish for a problem. And he was saying that one of the problems was a problem that happened during childbirth, even though it doesn't normally happen. But if it does happen, that's not really a reason to be cheshish, and you don't have to be cheshish. And I'm just telling you a little bit, a piece of information which I don't know is important or not important. I'll tell you everything that I have to say. I don't think I have much more to say. Now, during those years, I also had a yechidus with the Rebbe. I went into Rebbe yechidus in when I was 15 and when in Tavshin Lamed Aleph and in Tavshin Lamed Beis, I went into yechidus. And at that point in time, I already had an interest in learning in a Lubavitch yeshiva. And I asked the Rebbe whether or not I should go over and learn in a Lubavitch yeshiva. And the Rebbe told me that le'elam yilmid mokem sheli b'chafetz. So therefore, it's not something that I can make a decision for you. It's something you have to make your own decision. It's totally mokem sheli b'chafetz. That's how you should make a decision of where you should learn. That was that year. That year, there was I was supposed to learn somewhere else. I was going to go learn somewhere else in another yeshiva. And Lepeo, it didn't work out, and I went back to my old yeshivas. When I went to Yechidus the following year, around Pesach time, which is my Moledes, so the Rebbe, so again I wrote to the Rebbe. I said, listen, I said that I listen. I said, the Rebbe told me Mokum should be chafetz, but I'm telling you a story which shows you that I'm like a little bit confused. And Mamela, I don't really have a libe chafetz. It's not really clear to me what my libe chafetz is. So I'm asking the Rebbe. I mean, I'm saying it maybe very grub right now. I'm sure I wrote it a little edler, but I'm asking the Rebbe that the Rebbe should be machlet for me. So the Rebbe said, "Die Baldas Adin besteht in Zazach bringt sich ein Rambam, bringt sich ein Shulchan Aruch. Das Adover Aposhut, as jeder einer kann zukommen zu dem machlet sein, that every person could come to this understanding, and therefore you should be machlet on your own where you want to learn." And then the Rebbe finished it off on Mizol Harim Psuras Tevis. That was, so when I heard the word Mizol Harim Psuras Tevis, somehow or another it clinged in my ear that the Rebbe is saying, no, you should have seichel what to do right. There was a lashon one time there by farbrengs. The Rebbe said, Chacham hu shekiyamta divri chacham. It was also b'negebs, the Sefer Torah that he wrote for the Sefer Torah for the children. And there was an argument what it was, and there was something the Rebbe wanted, B'kitzer, there's a musik, there's a Lashon Mishnah, Chachamata Shekiyamta Diri Chacham. So when the Rebbe was saying, Makam Shali B'chafetz, I felt that, I'm just telling you the Hahergish, could be that was saying, but that's what it felt to me was Olherim Sudas Davis. So Lepel, that summer, Itaka went to Morristown. That was the summer of Lamed Beis. I went to Morristown. I remember.
How old are you at this point?
I just turned 17.
Mm-hmm.
I just turned 17. I went to Morristown, and I remember, trying to persuade me not to go to Morristown. There was like many different persuasions. I remember hearing a vort from somebody over there saying that, if you go to Lakewood now, or you go to Brisk, you'll always be able to go to Lubavitch. But if you go to Lubavitch, there's not a chance, much of a chance, that you'll end up in Lakewood or in Brisk. That was the vort that he told me, which was true, actually.
True.
And Lepel, so I went to Morristown. While I was in Morristown, there was also not such a clarity in me about staying. In fact, it was like Mamish Svara to go. And Lepel Mamish, it was Melech Tzvibel Olav Hasholem, which was like the Makkah Patish of me to stay. But I'm just saying, it's not like he did something which was like lechatchila nothing. It was something. It was a very, maybe a not clarity on my part, and that's what happened. So then I ended up going.
Something that a Melech said, or just being around him?
There was a farbrengen. It was like a starke farbrengen or Shchedesh El Tavshan Lamed Beis, actually. And that farbrengen, it was like the decision was made on my hand. It took a lot of mashke and whatever it was, without getting involved in the details shebedvarim. Maybe just mention Melech. Yeah, but just to mention Melech and this, that probably the last time I met Melech was I once went to Morristown for a Shabbos before Shavuos, Shabbos Achdus. So they would bring people to Fabreng. So I was probably from England. I went to Morristown to Fabreng, and there was someone sitting there, which that person was in Morristown as a result of me, which a connection, a family connection. So I felt that I was the one that ended up, a boy from Brazil. So he ended up being in Morristown as a result of me. So I told Melech, I was sitting next to Melech. So I told Melech that this Bacher is here because of me. So he said, is a Dachmainenikul. That's what I'm just saying, Melech's response to that Indian. So I think I told you pretty much everything. I mean, there's like a story which was printed and it was said, and different versions, but I can tell you the version that I know about. And that was that it's a true story. And maybe it brings out something, gives you a little bit of a hergish that I used to put on tefillin chalamed. The truth of the matter is, my father himself came from a family where they didn't put on tefillin chalamed. When he came to America,
your father was like a Litvisher?
My father came from a Polish background. His father was a Gerer Chossid. His father was a Yid that went to the Sfasemis, traveled to the Sfasemis. His grandfather, I think, went to the Chedush Urim. So he came from Polish background. But he was a Yossim as a young child. His mother passed away when he was 8 or 9 years old. And he learned in Yeshivas Navardek, Beis Yosef, which in Bialystok. So he is more of a Litvish yeshiva, Musa yeshiva. I'll call upon him, and that's how really he ended up being saved during the war, because he wasn't in his home. He was in yeshiva, and he ended up going to Vilna, and then from there escaping to Russia. But I'll call upon him.
Was he in Shanghai?
Huh?
He was in Shanghai?
No. He was in Russia.
Almost that route, okay, yeah.
No. There was maybe a svar, but he ended up being in Siberia, because he went to Russia with a bunch of people, with Yankel Galinsky, with a bunch of friends, and then they were arrested. They were arrested in Russia, and they were sent to Siberia. That's really what saved them. Mm-hmm. In any case, What was I saying about my father?
Saying because he put on tefillin.
So he started putting on film because when he came to America, he had a job that he felt he had to work chalamed, and someone told him he was working chalamed, and maybe he put on film chalamed. Really, I remember speaking to Rabbi Moshe didn't feel that there's any truth to it, but then, that there's only any validity to it. It's not a gerz. But I remember, but I was putting on film chalamed, and I started like davening Nusachari and tefillin the kesher, Chabad. I'm saying this all changed when I came to Maristan. Till I'm Maristan, I had whatever I got from my father's tefillin, and my nusach was also the nusach that I always learned to daven. But to change not to wear tefillin chalamed was something that I didn't feel comfortable. It was like not to wear tefillin chalamed. I just didn't feel comfortable. So I put on tefillin chalamed then, and Lepel, when I went to Yechidus, I wrote into the Rebbe that I put on tefillin chalamed, and I'm asking, should I continue or should I stop? I'm doing all Yom of Nusach Chabad. Should I change or shouldn't I change? That was the question that I asked the Rebbe. And in those years, you would have to bring into the Rebbe a zettel from the Anhola. In other words, you would bring your own zettel, you would give it to the Rebbe. I don't remember how you would give it. You'd give it both together into the Rebbe's hand. Because the zettel, your own zettel, the Rebbe would stick out his hand, and you would hand it to the Rebbe's hand. But the zettel, you would hand both together. You'd probably hand your zettel, which was an open zettel, and you would also hand a closed envelope with the Anhola's writings about you, or whatever. And the Rebbe read the letter, the way the Rebbe would read it, with moving his hands on it. And then the Rebbe opened the letter of the Anhola. He opened the letter of the Anhola. And like the Rebbe is looking at this letter and this letter, like look back and forth a few times. And then the Rebbe asks me, he says, "Du lernst Maristan?" So I said, "Yeah." So he says, "Und du legst tefillin chalamed?" So I said, "Yeah." So he says, "In Maristan legt man tefillin chalamed?" So I say, "No." So he said, "And du legst yeah?" So I said, "Yeah." Because that was the questions went back and forth. So he said, "Benegel pale, so sich führen, wie es steht in Alt Rebbe Shulchan Aruch, as Osir laniach tefillin b'chalamed." That's what he said. That's what I remember the Rebbe saying, even though I'm not really sure that it says that in Shulchan Aruch, but that's my recollection of the Yechidus right now, and then also is that recollection of the Yechidus.
The Rebbe told you very clearly not to.
Clear, not to. Das, was du es je gelegt tefillin chalamed, sollst du fragen Arav.
The fact that you put on in the past, you should ask it of.
Maybe what she should do now, maybe, yeah.
Like Mataneder, what?
Whatever, I don't know, ich weiß nicht. But that's what he told me. It was very clear. So I remember coming out of Yechidus feeling very, very elated, like the Rebbe, by the Rebbe was a davar aposhut that I have no business putting on tefillin chalamed. I remember walking out of Yechidus feeling very, maybe the word accepted. I don't know if that's a right word, but like feeling like that the Rebbe was telling me that this is where you belong. Du bist nicht da Absatzung. Du bist nicht da Fremder. Whatever, something like that. I'm telling you only my feelings, my ergeshim at that point in time. This is all I think printed. Somewhere I've said this over. Even though there's people that have all kinds of different nischois, which I think is lehoya b'lei nivra. But it's not of this particular story. But Zeo Inyan Bekitzer Nimrutz. I don't really have much more to tell you. I mean,
I have a question.
Okay.
Among Chassidim is brought to you by Chassidische Der Herr. We live in a chaotic world, a world where for us Chassidim, as a seinu, lei ra'inu, we do not have the ability to hear and see the Rebbe on a daily basis. Yet we know that the Rebbe is very much with us, and the Chassidus Chabad is alive and thriving more than ever before. One needs to only tap into it. Chossid Der Herr provides you and your family with the tools necessary to tap into all of this. whether it's the monthly magazine, the way it all began, whether it's their hair books, their hair online content, and so much more. Men, women, and children throughout the world benefit and use these tools on a daily basis. Whether it's children enjoying the children's magazine that comes along with the regular Der Hair, or enjoying the children's podcast, whether it's Bachrim in yeshivas receiving the Der Hair, whether it's girls in high schools enjoying their hair club in their local high school. People all over the world and from all walks of life enjoy and utilize these tools and take advantage of it. If you're not already subscribed to the Hair Monthly Magazine, do so today at derher.org. That's derher.org. Der Hair is a dynamic organization which is committed to continue providing these tools, grow on a constant basis, and do all that we can to help this effort. Baruch Hashem, it takes a lot of resources and finances to make this all happen. You can be part of Der Hair through your financial support as well, through visiting our website derher.org, or through contacting us to setting up a meeting. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the podcast. My question is, the Hishtalshalos Hadvarim in the story, how it happened, I just heard from you. And we once did an interview in Der Hair, and there was stuff printed in Kfar Chabad over the years. I've seen written things from you to this effect.
Did there contradictions?
That I don't remember already. I think I remember the Kfar Chabad article came out, and I was in Maristan. So I was reading it in Maristan about your learning in Maristan. But I also learned by the Melech. So my question for you is, what I would like to understand is, Lakewood or Brisk or Lubavitch, and you're not sure which one. So obviously something's attracting you to Lubavitch. What is that?
I can't really pinpoint it. It's not like, say it was a tifa zach, it was, I don't think I was such a tifa person, and I don't think I was such an edler person. There was a certain, it's very hard for me to explain it. There was certain vibes, there were certain feelings by the Rebbe's farbrengs, by being part of the Rebbe's people, was something which was very attractive.
What is it about the Rebbe's farbrengs?
I don't know. I don't know exactly. To be masber you, there's like a certain. It's hard for me to explain, and I mean, maybe in my mind I could explain it, but to verbalize it would be difficult. There's a certain. Let me maybe try to put it a little like edel. Maybe this is more than it really is. There is a metzias of a person that has a certain feeling, and there's a certain metzias of a person that's lost in a feeling. In other words, there's a metzias of you have a person that the metzias is there. It's just that the tzir is somehow or another involved in the person. And then there's a metzias where the person becomes so lost in the tzir that the whole person is only the tzir. I'm not explaining it well, and maybe I'm not understanding it well. But there's the same metzias of coming to Rebbe's farbrengen, and there was a musig that somehow or another you lost yourself. That there was a certain losing yourself. And it's like that this is really what it's all about. In other words, there's being yourself and then having this feeling, that feeling, but you don't lose yourself. And then there's a metzias of somehow or another coming to a situation and losing yourself to the situation. I'm not going to, it's going to sound like ich gehalten by great madregas. It's very far from holding by big madregas. But in a certain ze'er ampin, that was the Indian. And that was also what Melech spoke about. In that farbrengen, Rosh El, the oimik of what he was speaking about was, I remember, I mean, I could just tell you, Bekitzer, ein Tzayer kelikenu, shetzor tzura b'shteich tzura, he says, there could be a tzura of someone that's it, but that's only the tzura of the person that's it. In order to be there, you have to be in there and to lose yourself there. Masha'inkin, if you hold yourself in your tzir, and you only have an external tzir on your existing tzir, so that's not it. I'm not really sure if this is the format to be discussing what I'm discussing right now, and I'm not really sure that what I'm saying is really so clear or accurate.
I'm not sure if I
But
understand it.
I'm not sure you understand either. I'm looking at the expression in your face, and I'm trying to interpret the expression on your face. It reminds me a little bit of by Shiur this morning when I was speaking in Shiur. And I was trying to interpret.
I hope one person
Yeah,
understood it.
yeah.
So
Do you? I mean, is it clear a little bit what I'm saying?
I think what you're saying is that there's an akuda of, I think your whole approach to it was that you want to be, part of the Rebbe's Inyanim, part of
But you
Lubavitch.
want to lose yourself. You want to lose yourself. In other words, you retain. There's a sense of retaining yourself, and then adding some nice color to it. And there's a mitzvah of somehow or another you felt by the Rebbe that the Nekudas Advarim is to lose yourself into the minyanim which is connected to the Eibishter. Again, I don't want to speak like we're talking about in a high madrega. I think we exhausted this.
So let me move on. But I think, are you saying that the experience, forget about your journey, but the whole idea of being, let's talk about the Rebbe's farbrengs for now. You're by the Rebbe for 5 hours, and there's a farbrengs, and there's a certain, the feeling that you have is probably one of being uplifted, but it's something that you're taken out of your whatever gashmis is going on by you, and the Rebbe puts you in a different place. Is that
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it doesn't mean that during the farbrengs you can't have all kinds of machshavas and all kinds of going off on tangents with fashidin inyanim. It doesn't mean that way. You're not you're not transfixed. You can have all kinds of machshavas zaris, and all kinds of inyanim. But there's an akuda of the farbrengen, when there was a certain akuda of losing yourself, and that nakuda of losing yourself was something that was a certain feeling that could only be if you're part of it. There's a famous word that by Yisrei, by Yishma Yisrei, Mashmo Shamo Uba, he heard. Rashi says, Kriyas Yamsuf v'Mulchemes Amalek. Question is, what's pshat? So there was Kriyas Yamsuf. Kriyas Yamsuf was everybody knew about Kriyas Yamsuf. Everybody knew about Kriyas Yamsuf, the Gewaldig Union of Kriyas Yamsuf. But Lepeil, there was Amalek. Amalek also knew about Kriyas Yamsuf. So how was Amalek able to come after Kriyas Yamsuf? The answer is because Amalek heard from the Vitans. From the Vitans, he knew about it. It didn't change him. He himself remained himself. He became aware of something of Kriyas Yamsuf. And then there was Uba. Mashmur Shamu Uba. Yisrael realized that in order for something to happen, for him to really change, he has to be Uba. So Aldera, I remember the person trying to convince me that not to go learn in the Lubavitch Yeshiva. He says, I'm sure the Rebbe would want there should be like his people planted in all kinds of different places. I'm sure he has that interest of having, person, this yeshiva, that yeshiva, person connected to him. So the Mela could be the Ratzon of the Rebbe that you should be here. That I remember him saying. But I'm saying, what's the difference between being there? You're there, you had a shaykhs a little bit. I went to the Rebbe, I heard the Rebbe, but it wasn't the same. It wasn't in Ganzen not the same. Because you're yourself, and you're an observer, and you're watching, and maybe you're taking in, and maybe you're taking more in, but you're not part of it. Mashenkin being part of it is a whole different story, and that was a whole different experience, and that was worth to me more than maybe excelling in other inyanim that maybe I would have thought I maybe wanted that I could excel.
So let's maybe we should go back to the story a little bit. So you stayed in Morristown then after
I
that year,
stayed
or you
for a
went to
year
different
in
yeshiva?
Morristown. No, I went to stayed in Morristown that year. Tavshalam Gimel. Then in Tavshalam Daled, I was in 770. I went to 770. And I was
Oh,
in
so you went to
770.
for how many years?
To Lamates.
Oh, so it's a nice amount of years. So who was the and in 770? What was happening? Is it a Yale? Like what was the
In
what was the
770, really, my first year in 770, I didn't really have anything to do with Rabbi Yale. Because, actually we were in Chevitera. And Rabbi Yale didn't give Shiurim in 770. So really, a Bacher could be in 770 and not have anything to do with Rabbi Yale. Tavshan Lamadal was the Yom Kippur Mulcham, that Sukkot was like a lot of farbrengs and Bekitzer. I'll call upon him, a lot of things happened in Lamadalit, but in Lamed Hey, there was a lot of Bachrim went, and the Rebbe sent the Shluchim to Eretz Yisrael and to France and to Montreal. There were a lot of Shluchim sent those years. Let me put it this way: in Tavshan Lamed Daled, from the Kita that I was in Morristown, a group of Bachrim went to Miami. That's when the Yeshiva Miami began. Label Shapiro went to Miami, like 11 Bachrim went from that Kita in Morristown to Miami. Then the rest of the Bachrim went to 770. And then in Tavshan Lamed Hey, a group of Bachrims, also including our share, went to Ocean Parkway. Ocean Parkway, there was like always a group of Bachrim going to Ocean Parkway, to be Machazik Ocean Parkway. And the comeback of that was that Rabbi Yale would be the Mashpia. And Rabbi Yale would come to give a shir in Ocean Parkway. And that's when I started learning about Rabbi Yale. That's when I got to know Rabbi Yale. That was in Lamed Hay.
You're one of the Bachman that went to Ocean Parkway.
Yeah. I was one of the Bachman that went to Ocean Parkway. And then we were there Lamed Hay, and then Lamed Vav. We came back to 770. And then we were there in Lamed Vav on the side. We were there in 770 all those years. In 770.
And during those years, what was your coming from where you came from and then being in 770? There's different attractions that people have. Some of it's to Nachuk and everything that the Rebbe is doing. Some people it's the farbrengs. Some people it's Mivtzayim. I don't know, whatever it is. What was the thing that anchored you that you're there?
I'm not really sure how to answer the question. In Tov Shalom Medvav Grada, Parshas Mishpatim started the new Vad Hanochas Hatmimim, which is really strongly initiated by Hirschel Notik. Was very strongly involved in it.
Could you explain a little bit what was happening before? What was happening? What was the need to reestablish?
There used to be Hanochas. Rabbi Yale used to write the Hanochas. Then Rabbi Yale didn't write so much the Hanochas in a regular way. Then there was a Tkufa, different people wrote the Hanochas. But the Hanochas weren't coming out regularly. There wasn't like there used to be Hanochas, a musig of the Hanochas written down in Yiddish through what would be called the Vad Hanochas Hatmimim. And those Hanochas stopped coming out regularly. They were coming out periodically. I'm not really sure who would be involved in giving out those Hanochas. But from really Tov Shin Lamed Daled is when David Feldman came from Eretz Yisrael to America as a bacher, and he would give out on his own, mamish on his own, without anybody, he would give out in Lashon HaKodesh the Hanochas. He would give out the Hanochas in Lashon HaKodesh, with more bekitzer, not so uzgarbet, from what he wrote during Chazar by Rabbi Yael. But there wasn't, the gather of Hanochas Atmimim didn't happen anymore. And then in Tov Shalom Dvav, it was reestablished. And then David Feldman would write the Sichos, Tzvi Greenblatt would write the Mamorim, Hirschel Nottig would be doing a lot of typing and being involved in a lot of things. There would be Iki Posner was the Menayel of like the money of what the Mason needed. There was Avram Grossbaum was something over there. I don't remember exactly. There were different people that worked over there. And among those people that worked over there, I worked also a little over there. I was involved a little bit in writing the Mar Mekamis for the Sichos, a little bit. And we didn't have that time, today is much easier, with the computers and others. That time, we would have to sit down, we would go, I remember like it would be like a night, spending a night in the Levi Yitzchak library downstairs over there with the different svarim that would help us maybe find things. And that's what we do. So that was a little bit of an involvement for a few years in these hanochas. I'm just telling you this Zaytika thing, and then we learn. I mean, we learn some 70.
I imagine you only got involved in that because you were someone that was able following the farbrengs.
All right. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure what you meant to learn farbrengs.
No, you were following the Rebbe. You were.
Yeah, it wasn't so much to follow the Rebbe. There was things they wrote, and then you had to find them on Makkah. They would quote a Chazal, there was a Gemara, there was Achreinim, there would Shulchan Aruch, Rambam. The Rebbe wouldn't say where, so you'd have to find it. You have to find it, and sometimes it wasn't easy to find it. I remember the Rebbe one time taking a Hanocha, which was given out by Hanochas Atmimim, and the Rebbe like going through it, and Mar Mekamis, and like saying you're saying a medrash, there's a Gemara, whatever. And it was like wasn't very happy about.
Mm-hmm. And
this is on by Bachram. It's like.
But you weren't. You weren't. Yeah.
I wasn't. I was just helping a little bit. Wasn't the from the case I mentioned though.
So you weren't part of the Chazara.
I could go to Chazara probably, but it had nothing to do with the Chazara. In other words, to do what I did, I didn't have to be a Chazara.
Right. So you just had to work off the Hanacha. You have to know some Torah though. That helps a little bit. One of the integral components of being a Chossid are the Chsidish Yomim Tovim and Yom Pagra. Whether it's Hey Tevis, Yud Shvat, Yud Aleph Nisan, or Gimel Tammuz. These days give us an opportunity to connect with our Rabbeim, to connect with each other, and be better Chassidim. What is the story behind each of these days? How did the Rebbe commemorate and celebrate these days? And most importantly, what are the lessons, the takeaways, and the action items Hamaisa Hua Iker needed for each of these days? All of this and much, much more are answered in the new set recently published by Der Herr. Our Days is a journey through the Chabad calendar in story, meaning, and practice. With over 700 beautiful, glossy pages with elevated content, beautiful, beautiful photographs, you, your family, and friends will enjoy and live with each Chassidish Yom Tov. This book is a must for every Lubavitcher home, for every shul, for every school. It is a perfect gift item. This will not collect dust. It will be used day after day, month after month, year after year. You can have the set. Go to derher.org/our days. Order your set today and start living with the Chassidish Yom Tov. Afterwards, I mean, you stayed in Crown Heights all the years. You worked.
I was teaching Al Torah.
Al Torah the whole
Started
time.
teaching Al Torah. Yeah.
That's what you did the whole time when you were in Crown Heights.
Yes.
So
From
you had,
the Elul of Lamates. Elul Lamates, I went into Al Torah.
Okay. So, and it's a unique thing because you're married and you're in Crown Heights and but you still you didn't leave, so you're still there every Shabbos. Like that's a unique thing. So my question for you is, maybe we'll move on to, I mean, your dealings from Lamates till today with Bachrim, right? Al Torah and then Manchester and now Kfar Chabad. So my question is, I know you farbrengs a lot for Bachrim, and what are the? My question is, what do you? What's the main thing that you think is important to impart to Bachrim? I don't know about today or Amal or always. Like, what's something that either is lacking or that needs to be strengthened, which to Bachrim by extension means everyone, because we were all Bachrim once, and there's things that are kaim la'ad.
I mean, the Maisa say, in today's world, I think it's very important for a Bacher to know that his shaykhs, I mean, maybe it's more because of my background. He has to really appreciate that he really has a pnimizdika shaykhs with the Rebbe. It's very important, like a Bacher should understand. You know, a Bacher in the Yuds didn't have to impress upon himself that he had a shaykhs with the Rebbe. The Rebbe was there for him. It was there. He was Raskin didn't have to think that the Rebbe knows who he is and the Rebbe is caring about him, etc., etc. Not Shimon Kalazarov, and not Rabbi Yael, and not Chvezver. All these people were there, and al derech Shlomo Zarchi, which was later. But as it went in the Lamids, so then there could be a Metzias of a Bacher that wasn't really sure whether the Rebbe knows who he is. There could be a Metzias of a Bacher that wasn't really sure if the Rebbe knows who he is. And certainly the Mems. And then, now there's now. So a Bacher has to understand this concept, this understanding, he has to really impress upon himself. It's just like, the Eibishter is miyached malchusi alam yisrael bechlal v'olav bifrat ki chayev adam leimer b'shvili nivrei elam. So a person has to know that there is a personal relationship between him and the Eibishter. It's not like the Eibishter is looking at him as just a number. This kilo v'olav bifrat ki chayev adam leimer b'shvili nivrei elam. So al derech zeh tzadikim deimum lebeiram. There's a musig that there is a relationship between every Bacher and every Chossid and every Yid with the Rebbe, and that's something which is true. It's not something which is murgish. It's not something which you feel regularly, naturally. It's something which you have to work on to understand that that's the truth. And a person has to realize that the truth doesn't depend on our irrigation. Because we have to realize that there's a truth which is not totally in our irrigation. And we could try to be margish this truth. We could try to develop a certain, a feeling of bringing this truth closer to ourselves. But that doesn't mean that the truth is dependent. It's not contingent on the way we feel. And that's something which we always have to talk about. We have to talk about this idea that this every bacher and every person is very, very dear and very personal connection to the Rebbe. And you can make a Kal V'chemer, maybe a Kal V'chemer. If the Rebbe spoke so much in the Heit Tevis about the Sefer, which is connected to the Rebbe, a Sefer which is connected to the Rebbe, that is part of the Rebbe, so how much L'chura more so a Bacher or a Yid, that's the Rebbe's a Yid, how much he's part of the Rebbe. If a Sefer is part of the Rebbe, so a Bacher is Dach Nishdava Seredin is part of the Rebbe. And he has to understand that. And then he has to understand that he has keches and he has the ability to be able to bring that out elapel, mikech elapel. And the idea is that a person, the Rebbe gives us, the Rebbe, the idea of the Rebbe wants to be, we and the Rebbe are not two things. It's not pshat that there's a Rebbe and there's us. And Memele, we stayed the Loshen. I remember Rabbi Yale saying over from some sefer that there's a question if you're allowed to ask malachim to beseech upon you, malachi rachmim, b'slichas, machnisei rachmim. So what about Benegay asking a Rebbe? So the answer is, when you're going to a Rebbe, you're not going to someone else. So the dogma is, he says, you have a problem with your foot. So your head is asking for your foot. Why is your head asking for your foot? The foot, let the foot is the problem. Well, the answer is because the head and the foot are one thing. Unverkehrt. If there's a problem with the foot, is the problem with the in the head. The head feels the problem with the foot. So a person understands that his relationship to the Rebbe, and he has to it's not something which is, what I'm saying right now is not something I'm saying because I have a hergish. We have to realize the truth. We have to realize the truth. That is the truth the way it says in Torah, the truth the way it says in Tanya, the way it says in Chossidus. And then we have to bring that truth into ourselves, to think about the truth and internalize the truth, and to understand that that's our truth. Whether we feel the truth, we don't feel the truth, we have to try to become closer to that truth. And I think that's what we have to farbrengs about. Of course, we have to farbrengs about doing the right things and knowing what's expected of us. We have to farbrengs about that as well. I mean, everybody in his inyan, going, doing the things that are expected of him. But there's a certain general idea which is something which l'chure should also be discussed. Again, it could be it's connected to my general, tchilas dvarenu.
What do you mean?
So maybe I have more of a chayas in it of
what do you mean
being
it's
part of the
connected?
Rebbe. I'm saying that what brought me here in the first place.
So why is it so important to feel that or to know that?
Why is this important to know? I think that's really the first thing of a chossid. The first thing of a chossid is that he understands. In other words, first thing of a yid is to understand that his Metzias is emes, Shema Yisrael, Havaya Elokeinu, Havaya Echad, that Havaya is Elokeinu, that Kechenu B'Chayiseinu is from Havaya. That's the first Yisod of a Yid. The Yid that has that his Metzias are different Metzias. They're not Amma Metzias and a regular Veltische Metzias, and I just have different obligations. I have different mitzvahs. Person has to realize that his whole Metzias Ayid nitar ken and nitar vil zayin organism from the likus. That's the Yisodi you say this. So al derech zeh a chossid has to realize that his connection to the Rebbe is an atzmizdik connection. And then, of course, you have, it's not atzmizdik connection, but lepel, sevil tzachdos, sevil tzachjans, and you want to do this, and you want to do that, and you don't actually, actualize this actual connection which we know about. But at least, first of all, we have to know it in our brain. And then we have to see to it, maybe to bring it down into Maisa. And hopefully to bring it up, shickle down at the heart, in our heart as well. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
So what does a bacher do, or any person? What does a person do to I mean, there's a idea, you have to know about it. But what's something that a person could do to? I mean, I know you don't. You said not hergation, but obviously, if you feel it, then it's more, it has a shaykhs not only to your mayach but also to your leiv, and there's your emotions are involved. What does someone do to ma'ir and arouse this?
Okay, so there's these are the inyanim that a person has to be ma'ir. A person, the erste Sache is you have to know about it. Then a person could think about what the Rebbe did for him. Every person has his, particular story, a little hair, his father, his mother, people, what the Rebbe did for all kinds of different people. A person is mizbeinen in those things that are me'er this level of Ava, this level of Ava. I'm reminding myself, du willst doch Herren Meises. So I just remember my mother in Tov Shel Lamed Daled, in the summer of Lamed Daled, had an operation, and they gave her a mismatch of blood, which means they gave her the wrong blood, and that caused that her kidneys should stop working. This was in Tov Shel Lamed Daled. And like she was a mamish, a mad matzah sekonis nefoshes, because she was in a hospital that they didn't have a dialysis. And somehow or another, I'm not really sure how my father was poiled that they should get her to be moved from that hospital. It was through Twersky from Borough Park. And at Koponim, and she was moved to downstate hospital where she had a dialysis, but she was on a dialysis, and it was like in a very, very shvera matzav. And they wanted to do a certain test on her, which I wasn't really sure it made sense to do the test. I was a bacher then. So I remember running to 770 and going into Merkez to write down and settle to the Rebbe, to ask the Rebbe whether I should make the test, whether I should make the test. And I wanted to put like some money into the pot. I'm asking a bracha. So I had like $20 in my pocket. So I put $20 into that settle, and I gave it to Label Groner. Now, Label told me that the Rebbe is really about to leave. The Rebbe is about to go home. He was going to go home like the afternoon. The Rebbe would go home in the afternoon for an hour. It was like 4:30 or something. And I probably started crying and saying that it's like really, really an emergency. So he took the zettel and he walked over to the door, I remember, to the Rebbe's door, knocked on the door. The Rebbe opened the door, and he gave the Rebbe the zettel. And like a minute or so later, the Rebbe came out. And on the way out, he gave a Label Groner, I don't know if it was only that zettel or maybe other zettlach as well, with an answer. And the answer was I should do it. Maybe ask Ratzin probably. And then the Rebbe sent out, I remember, instead of the $20 bill, he sent out a 10 and 2 5s. And he said that they should give me a Kabbalah from maybe Lishkas Chashoin, I think, was the name of the receipt. Which sounded very funny, $20, a bachi, I was getting a Kabbalah. It didn't make sense to me, like Lishkas. So I understood that Mustama the Rebbe wants I should have something from him to bring to my mother. That's what I understood. So I remember taking the receipt and putting it under her pillow. And the Lepel Baruch Hashem, things. I'm not saying immediately, but Baruch Hashem, the one of the kidneys started reworking. She lived like another 10 years actually after that. But I call upon him. I'm just giving you a little story of something where people had, the Rebbe's on his way out. And I'm not saying like it's in Zinin. It's not like like everything is always gecheshbent. Give him a Kabbalah. Give him a Kabbalah. You have to understand that there was giving me something. It's like he's giving me something. It's like, there's little things of the
Were
Rebbe
there
which you don't notice. You don't. You have to just think about it. Think about where the Rebbe would like take an extra like time. I mean, while I'm here, I'll tell you another story, which some stories are good. My father, I don't remember him ever being by the Rebbe's farbrengen b'chlal kemat, and certainly not on a mitzvah yontif. But for some reason or other, there was one time that he was there on a mitzvah yontif, and maybe it was Pesach, and he was staying at my house. I'm not 100% sure really what the circumstances were. And the Rebbe made Havdalah. And my father, heard Havdalah from the Rebbe, but he was thinking whether or not he should be Yaitza, because my sister, he needed to make Havdalah probably for my sister. And, women normally don't make Havdalah themselves. And if he's going to hear Havdalah, so he's not going to be able to Yaitza her. So he wasn't really sure, but the Rebbe was making Havdalah, should he be Yaitza or not? So in his mind, he decided that I'll make a tonight. That if I'm going to make Havdalah later for my daughter, so then I won't be Yaitza. And if I won't make Havdalah later, then I will be Yaitza. That was the Tanai that he made in his mind when the Rebbe started making Havdalah. And the Rebbe made Havdalah. And then, everyone went for Keshel Bracha. And he also went for Keshel Bracha. I don't know what, he went for Keshel Bracha. And normally you give Keshel Bracha, they would just pour Keshel Bracha and people would go by. But when he got Keshel Bracha, so the Rebbe turned to him and asked him, why isn't he drinking the wine? Which is very unusual, very, very, very unusual. So my father got very mavovel, and he just started taking the wine to his mouth. So the Rebbe said, Machfrir bracha. My father told me he wouldn't have made a bracha because he was like so mavovel. He wouldn't have made a bracha. So he made a bracha, and I imagine the Rebbe answered Amen. Said L'chaim, and then he drank it. So obviously he didn't make Havdalah. But somehow or another, it was like the Rebbe took an interest, like no one would know this. But the Rebbe took an interest for my father to be Yetz Havdalah from him. That's the only beer. Somehow or another, it was important to the Rebbe. This is like talking in the seconds that's going on. For the Rebbe to be interested in him being Yetz Havdalah from him, that's l'chura. I mean, I don't see any other beer. I mean, I'm only there but just a tidbit of information, which this is a matnas chara b'tzida to you.
were there other instances that you saw the Rebbe's interest with you personally? I know there was later Tafshin and Beis. I mean, was there other things?
There were times that Rebbe gave very, very warm brachas to me in different instances. Not something I could really talk about right now.
You don't want to share?
It's not I won't want to share. I'd like to share, but it's not. It's not so glottic.
Okay. So this is something that I guess it's an avodah that people should strive to achieve. Let me ask you a question. When you were Bacher,
let me just take one more thing. I think a person has to also be mizboinen in how much the Rebbe gave away from himself for us on a regular basis. On a regular basis. I mean, the Rebbe was involved totally. In other words, I'm going to say something maybe sounds very, very stupid. And I think I said it to people, but they look at me like a little bit funny. The Rebbe's room was a very small room. And everyone knows the way it was all the years, the Rebbe's room. Now the Rebbe's room is empty, but the Rebbe's room was piled up with svarim. It was like full of svarim. There was like, you'd walk into Yechidus, there would be svarim on the floor till the chves was covered over with papers. And the table was clear because they cleared it for Yechidus, but normally the table wasn't clear either. The Rebbe normally by the table never sat by the place where he sat by Yechidus. He had like a little corner of his table where he sat on a regular chair, and that's where he would write. That's where he would write. Maybe when the maskir would come in and he would have to dictate, the chveis could be who sat in his. I don't know how. I don't know how. But I imagine. So the Rebbe was there. So like you think to yourself, like a regular Purim, like thinking Purim. The Rebbe would Purim would daven in the morning, 10 to 12. 12 o'clock pretty much would be finished davening. He would go up to his room. He'd give Shalchmanis. Then he would come in, Mishpin Chizkatz, Matanis Lavyenim, and all kinds of, things happening in Purim. And then whatever the Rebbe's Sdarim was, and then it would be Mincha. Mincha would be 3:15. And after Mincha, a certain time after Mincha, the Rebbe would go home for Sudas Purim, which didn't take very long. An hour, whatever, like a regular afternoon. And then the Rebbe would come back to his room. Literally, he didn't come down back to a couch. He didn't go back to a recliner. He didn't go back to a rocking chair. He went back to the regular room, which was full of svarim, which he had a little corner of the desk that he could write on or put a sefer over there with a regular chair, and that's where he would spend the next few hours until the farbrengen. Everyone knows you have one of farbrengs. You have to farbring today, so you have to want to maybe lie down a little bit, want to rest a little bit. There was no resting. There was no geschäften. The Rebbe was constantly involved in trying, in doing his Aveda, which whatever the Rebbe's Aveda is, but learning and davening and writing and answering and doing, just to think about it. And here, we are here, and the Rebbe wants to encourage us and to connect to us, and we should connect to him, and he should connect to us, and we should bring Mashiach down. That's what the Rebbe wants. That's what the Rebbe is all about. That's Eibishter is all about. That's what Yiddishkeit is all about. So I think if we think about it in a more personal, real passion, maybe I'm talking to Akshamadik. It could bring down a shtickle epis, a shtickle shaykhus lahalev gam. I'm looking at your expression. When you have these expressions, I'm not really sure how to interpret them.
I am enjoying every word.
Okay, very good.
When you were a bacher in 770, I mean, you said the story with your mother, saying this type of ava, which you're describing, is that something that you felt then, or it's something that developed over the years?
I think I felt it then. I think I felt it then. Maybe I felt it over the years as well, but I think I felt it then.
So is it more challenging today after Gimel Tamas to feel it than it was when you were a bacher in 770?
I mean, I would say in today's world there are bachrim that are moser v'nosen to the Rebbe, not any less than a moleka bachrim. That's what I feel. Our bachrim need guidance. We always needed guidance. You always needed guidance. But there's a certain ismasrus, which is a tifa ismasrus. It just has to be guided in a way that it should be the right way. People have a stark ismasrus and goes out into all kinds of inyoni teyu and things of yinikas achitzenim. And you need to have guidance. And you have to have also people that are bari deya and loyal to the Rebbe and normal in the sense of having a deya yeshara and nemonim getrai to the Rebbe and doing the right things. That's what we need. But the bachrim are a keli for it. Just the problem is that there's all kinds of verschiedene ruches which are causing people, from people that are maybe whatever, either not so getrai or not so normal. If you're allowed to say such a thing, you have to have normale getraya people that are dedicated and loyal to the Rebbe in a real way and being Chassidim, not Balabatish, Chassidim.
I think you're talking about a bacher that's interested, and he's saying that he should go on the proper derech, I guess. What about a bacher that he's not so into it? Like is that more prevalent or more of a challenge today? Or what do you
Listen,
say
you
to
have
such a
to.
bacher?
I'm not sure what you could say to him. I think what we have to do is do. I mean, I'll share with you just a story that I heard, not from a Lubavitch source, and I told someone the story, and then the person told me a Lubavitch story connected to the source. I'll tell you both stories. The first story was a story that I just heard lately from on a WhatsApp from a Daf Yomi shir. The person said a story azoy, that there was a person there was a Sheva Brachas or Bar Mitzvah, I'm not sure, and this person was actually a wealthy person, the person who was making the party, and he had an expensive, very expensive 2-liter bottle of wine. He said the name of the wine. I don't remember the name of the wine, but it sounded like we're talking about a bottle of wine. In my mind, the way he described it was a bottle of wine that wasn't less than $1,000. Such a bottle of wine. And then someone working in the kitchen went ahead and opened the cork, opened the bottle, and the mashgiach saw it. The mashgiach just saw this person an hour ago or so being Machal Shabbos with another group of other people. Was smoking. This person probably was officially a frum boy, but he was being Machal Shabbos, unfortunately. And he saw it, the mashgiach saw it. The mashgiach was an Erlich Yid, and in his mind, Machal Shabbos, his yain nesach. So he opened the bottle of wine, and the wine is obviously not mavushal. We're talking about such expensive wine. So he took this big bottle of wine and he poured it down the sink, like a good Jew. But then he was also a good Jew. He goes over to the balabas of the event, and he tells him what happened. He says, this and this person. I don't know if he told him the name of the person that actually opened the wine, but he said someone opened the wine. He saw this person being Machal Shabbos, so he felt it was Yain Nesach, and he poured this wine down the sink. So the guy tells him, "You did very good. You did the right thing. I appreciate it." And you could tell the other person, whoever he is, that I have no tightness to him, because he also did the right thing. He opened the bottle of wine. He didn't realize that he's making the wine Yain Nesach. Nobody meant to do anything wrong. And, we'll just pass by it. And that's the end of that story. This guy was very impressed, the mashgiach, of this person's reaction. So he goes over to the worker and he tells the worker, "I want to tell you that I told the boss, I saw you open the bottle of wine. I saw you smoking a cigarette an hour before. As a result of that, I poured the bottle of wine down the sink. I told the boss about it. The boss said I did very well. He told me to tell you, not that he knows who you are, that you also did fine. No worry about it. The reason I'm telling it to you is you should know that there are nice people in the world, and you should one day also be nice to somebody." That was the end of the story over there. 2 years later, this mashgiach meets this person. And this person tells the mashgiach, "I want to tell you that story, you saw me being Machal Shabbos, unfortunately. But since then, I was never Machal Shabbos. Because of that story." This is a story that I just heard 2 days ago. So I told it over to somebody. I don't remember who I said it over to. So the person tells me that there's such a story in the Rebbe Wilhelm. The Rebbe Wilhelm in Thailand, there was Rosh Hashanah, and he had a big Olam Rosh Hashanah. He had a few hundred people. And Rosh Hashanah in the morning, someone comes over to him and he asks him to blow shofar for him. So he says, "Why do you blow shofar? We're going to blow shofar. We're going to daven soon. You'll hear shofar then." He says, No. I have a flight that I have to catch. But before I go on the flight, I want to hear shofar because if I promise someone or whatever, I want to hear shofar. Because Nehemiah had a shtickle conversation with him. What's the rush to have this flight? He already had the flight. He says, listen, you stay here for Rosh Hashanah, and I'll pay you for your flight after Rosh Hashanah. I'll pay for it. The guy listened. He said, okay. So he stayed for Rosh Hashanah, and Nehemiah paid for his flight. And 4 weeks later, he calls up Nehemiah. He said, I want to tell you that I wasn't ashamed of Shabbos, and I was able to fly on Rosh Hashanah. It was no problem. But since then, for the last 4 Shabbos, I wasn't Mechal Shabbos. These are 2 little stories, which is a little inspiration to us in how we try to influence people. In other words, to show that we care and we're interested. I'm not saying that we don't have to explain things to them, but I figure let me share this with you. I hope I'm not taking up too much of your time.
You're saying this in Hemshech to what I asked about a bacher that needs to.
Yeah. I think if a bacher feels that you really care for him, and that you have an interest in him, and you're willing to do something for him. So there's a reciprocal relationship. There has to be a sincere interest, and that's really the success of the shluchim are also when you really show that person you're interested in him. You're really interested in him. You're really trying to help him. You're not trying, like someone asked someone, are you going to get any brownie points if I put on tefillin or something? Well, I'm really interested in you putting on tefillin. And let's say I'm not really interested in putting on tefillin. So you have to try to develop an interest. You have to develop an interest. So you're really interested that this bacher should understand how to learn. You're really interested that this bacher should develop a certain relationship with the Rebbe. You're interested that this bacher should taka have some more of a connection to Yon Chassidus. So you have to work on yourself. That you have to work on yourself. That you should have that interest. It's not so much working on him. It's more working on yourself.
Takes a lot of Avos Yisrael. The Hanholas need to have a lot of Avos Yisrael.
Right, we do. That's what has to happen. So you have a lot of Avos Yisrael. You have to have a lot of seichel. You have to have dedication. And you have to realize that what you're doing is important. That's the first thing. You have to realize that what you're doing is very, very important. Very, very important. There's certain people. I remember, maybe it's not nice to say so. I remember once being by the oil, and a person coming over to me, and whatever he comes over to me. I know who he is. He never learned by me. And he tells me like this, I want to tell you, he says, I learned in Ola Torah, and I was in Shir Dalet, and I was like not really a bacher of learning in Shir Dalet. It was a davar apashut that I'm not going on shlichus after Shir Dalet. I'm going to go. My father has a business. His father has a business. I'm not going to say his name, but his father is a very, very fine read, and he's a fameglach yid, and he has a good business. And it was a davar apashut that he is going to join his father's business. And then we had a farbrengen. And whatever something was said by the farbrengen during that farbrengen that touched him, place was, it was negiyah. Like, what do you really want your children to look like? And I think that was the Nekudas Advar. What do you really want your children? In other words, if you want to know what you really want, you want to know what do you want your children to look like. Do you want your children to look like you, or do you want your children to look like someone else? And if you want your children to look like someone else, so maybe you have to think about being that someone else. And maybe that was the Nekudah of the farbrengen. And somewhere or another, there was farbrengen, and it really very much hit home. And he came that night, and he made a decision that he wants to go on shlichus. But there was no shaykhs to go on shlichus. He was a complete failure in Shir Dalet. And then he went to the Menal that time, and he spoke to him, and the guy laughed from him. What are you telling you? There's nothing to talk about. He this and that. Because later on, I found out he didn't tell me that he wrote to the Rebbe, and there was like a whole inyan happening. B'kitzur lepel mamish, he went on shlichus. He went on shlichus. And Lepel, he tells me he was mekarev hundreds of people. That's what he tells me. This guy's telling me. He's not on shlichus right now. I think he's working.
You're
But
talking
he
about
was
a
like,
Bacher shlichus.
no, he wasn't. He went on a bacher shlichus.
Bacher shlichus.
But then now, as a younger man, I'm not 100% sure if he's on shlichus or now. As a younger man, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Not sure. But he told me he was mekarev many people, maybe hundreds of guzma. He was mekarev many people. Since then, and he's saying it's all because of that farbrengen that we were sitting together, and he was touched. What happened? There was no tif v'zachin. It was like a certain. Because you have to try to impose upon someone, give them a little bit of your heart. The kudus advar. I think. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm in the position to stop this conversation, but mir duchtzach that I spoke more than I really wanted to say. I probably said more things than I wanted to say, but didn't say anything which anyone's going to have time to me that I said. But
I
is
think
that
it's
all
more
right?
popular when you.
Or that's not?
I think it's more popular when you say things that people don't want to hear. I think that makes it more popular.
I hear
Okay,
you.
so we'll have to
I hear you.
do a part 2 when you're ready to do that.
I hear you. I hear you.
Okay.
Beseder.
Yashakech Rabbi
Thanks.
Wolberg, and you should be matzliach in your shlichus, and we should all be matzliach in our shlichus, and that's it. Should be better chassidim. So thank you very much.
Amen. Amen. You're very welcome. All the best.
Sei gesund.
Sei gesund.